My personal equity statement itself is the following. I will use my connections in the community to establish meaningful partnerships with non-white families, community leaders, and organizations so they feel empowered to help inform equitable changes in school practice. And I will use my leadership skills and personal example to empower staff members to do the same. Some of the rationale and background behind this. It's tough to choose between commitment number 6 of the Tennessee Playbook, which is embedding cultural competence in school practice, and number 7, partnering with community allies. I think both are foundational. You have to do those before you do the others. I chose number 7 because I think that's the best place to start. I see this one as especially foundational because it leads to the others. We won't be able to identify our blind spots and make substantial changes to discipline and attendance policies, hiring, access to classes, post-secondary preparation, and other areas reflected in the Tennessee Playbook until we become more culturally competent and embed that competence into all of our practice. That's commitment number 6. But we won't be able to get there without number 7. As an overwhelmingly white teaching staff and administration, teaching a mostly non-white student body in a mostly non-white community, we cannot achieve that cultural competence without partnering with non-white community allies. We need those allies in order to help us see what we're not seeing and understand the daily experience of our students and families. We need those allies in order to help students and family members feel comfortable in getting involved in the school. We need those allies in order to provide role models for our students. They need to see non-white family members in our school. They need to hear from non-white business owners and community leaders in their classes and school programming. They need to work with non-white professionals on projects and strive for changes along non-white community leaders. Only then will we be able to make changes that will matter to our students and families. Without those community partnerships, without that commitment number 7, we're just guessing as to what we need to do and how we need to do it. And we'll just be another group of white people making promises that we can't keep. And our talk about a commitment to equity will ring hollow to those that commitment is meant to empower. So we need to start with commitment number 7, partnering with community allies. Some quantitative data that supports this shift mostly comes from the disparity between our white and non-white students in academic and behavior indicators. White students outperform students of color in key academic areas, including raw standardized test scores, growth on standardized tests, and GPA. Students of color are overrepresented in absences, tardies, and disciplinary referrals. Qualitative or anecdotal data comes from conversations with our most at-risk students, who are all non-white. They have said that they feel misunderstood, like they don't belong, like they're not trusted, like school isn't for them, that their teachers don't really want them there. They're just going to get in trouble or fail anyway, so what's the point? One explanation for this data, both qualitative and quantitative, is that non-white students aren't motivated or they don't have the support at home. And if they would just focus more, take school seriously, and make better choices, and if their parents would value education and hold them accountable at home, they would do just as well as the white students. But an equity-minded explanation would counter that, and it would factor in the historical and societal factors that make it much more difficult for people of color to trust the education system, and much more difficult to access the resources needed to do well in school. Not to mention the biases that cause our white staff to have lower expectations of students of color and misinterpret cultural differences as misbehavior or disrespect or insubordination. Thus, we must become more culturally competent, and we can't do that without partnering with our families and community members of color and our students of color so we can learn from them and so they can feel safe enough to engage in the life of the school. If I'm understanding leading and lagging indicators correctly, the data mentioned above, plus the lack of engagement in the school on the part of non-white families and community members, are leading indicators that we need to be more deliberate in forming partnerships with the community. Lagging indicators would be a decrease in the gaps between white and non-white students in behavioral and academic indicators, and an increase in the amount of non-white families and community members who engage with the school who engage with the school. There would also be improvements in teaching and learning. That would be a lagging indicator as well. A more diverse curriculum and audit in all of our classes of the images and materials to make sure there's representation and that we're not inadvertently perpetuating stereotypes and misconceptions. There would also be a change in practices like more cooperative learning and more student voice in the classroom, more multicultural inclusion, such as different cultures represented in music and theater and other aspects of the arts. So those are the lagging indicators. In order to realize this and make this shift, we need to leverage our existing connections and relationships to be more deliberate in having conversations about equity in the school and in the community. That will help us become more culturally competent and will build trust and a sense of solidarity among the non-white families and community members we already have relationships with. And that in turn will help us to build more relationships and broaden the conversation. A few ideas for starting places, including being deliberate about talking about equity with people we already have relationships with, including our mayor, who is Black, the leader of Black Lives Matter Lake County, the leaders of Mano a Mano Family Resource Center, and the legal advocates for immigrants, as well as the families of color that we already have regular contact with. Those connections are already there. Why haven't I engaged in those conversations already? That's where we need to start. This is the definition of equity that our task force has been using to sharpen our vision and clarify our goal. Equity is where there is no marginalization of anyone, and every student, staff member, parent, community partner, and guest feels that they can show up and engage and excel as their authentic selves and be empowered to advocate for change. Based on that definition and this rationale, again, my commitment is toward number 7, building allies and partnerships within the community. And the equity statement that encapsulates all of this is that I will use my connections in the community to establish meaningful partnerships with non-white families, community leaders, and organizations so they feel empowered to help inform equitable changes in school practice. And I will use my leadership skills and my personal example to empower staff members to do the same. I hope that this clarifies my statement and my mission, and I hope that those who hear it will hold me accountable to living this out. Thank you.